Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 4C Risk virtual webinar, where we will be discussing reconceiving compliance traceability and how automating your compliance traceability will improve your visibility into the effectiveness of your internal control framework. Before we get started, we wanted to note that this session will be recorded for purposes of referencing in the future. Now, a little bit about myself. I'm Elizabeth Abraham. I'm head of customer and partner success. I've been passionate about enhancing governance, risk, and compliance programs for organizations for over 25 years. Working as a practitioner and an advisor on the vendor side of the equation, I've seen the complexities of the dynamically changing landscape and the challenges companies face in understanding the gaps within their control environment, their ability to provide evidence to the auditors, and penalties associated with non-compliance. Before I introduce our speakers for this approximately 45-minute session, there are just a couple of housekeeping items. All participants will receive a recording of this session. It will also be posted on our website for viewing. Note, if you have questions during the session, please post them in the chat window. We will respond back to you through email if time does not permit in the meeting today. Now, for the format of the session, I will start off by giving a brief background about the current business and regulatory environments and how they're intertwined. Then we will have an interesting Q&A conversation with Venki Yaraputu, the founder and CEO. He will provide insight into why staying compliant is so hard and how automating compliance traceability helps organizations keep pace with the changing business and regulatory environments and helps the compliance posture of the organization. We will conclude with Richi Bhatia. She will provide a demo of some of 4C Risk functionality. She will focus on how AI will help automate manual and repetitive compliance tasks, and more importantly, how automating compliance traceability will improve your compliance program. Let's delve in. Companies are making significant financial and human capital investments to ensure they have the transparency into evolving business activities, and the proper controls are in place to comply with the ever-changing regulatory business and external risk landscapes. Even with billions of dollars invested annually, it's still hard to keep pace and identify the specific regulations that are changing in a sea of over 1,200 global regulators. The regulatory scrutiny is also intensifying, and senior management and board members are being individually held accountable for non-compliance. Now, joining us to answer a couple of questions, the founder and CEO of 4C Risk and an amazing visionary, Venki Yaraputu. He has extensive experience in the GRC domain, having built GRC platforms and, more importantly, deployed more than 400 risk and compliance solutions globally in his 20-plus career. While working with clients to build out and automate their governance, risk, and compliance programs, he has seen time and time again the advantages of transforming a company's ability to provide proper oversight based on internal and external mandates. Thank you, Venki, for meeting with us today and walking through your thought process behind why reconceiving compliance traceability is paramount for businesses today. You've worked with many companies to assist them with revamping their GRC programs and structures. What is the key takeaway you want to share?
Thank you, Elizabeth, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening for everyone on this webinar. It's a pleasure speaking to you all, and we appreciate your time. So the question was, what are some of the key takeaways, or what is the key takeaway from my 20 years in this particular GRC domain. Conventional GRC solutions are critical infrastructure for GRC programs. They automate workflow, improve the collaboration between the different teams, first, second, and the third line of defense. But they don't really do much when it comes to automating GRC tasks. Tasks like compliance traceability, for example, or impact assessment, or building out a rule inventory. These are, these are just a few tasks, right? These tasks are typically performed offline. These are tedious jobs, takes a lot of hours, and it's mind-numbing in some instances. Right? And conventional tools put the burden of discovery and analysis on the GRC teams. And there is a good reason why they do that. Right? Because we deal with unstructured text in GRC. 80% of the text that we deal with in GRC is unstructured. It's very similar to what you see in other domains as well. But that's where the similarity stops. Right? In GRC, this unstructured text has a lot of intelligence that need to be understood, that needs to be extracted, and that needs to be actioned. It's not just reference document. And if it is one or two documents, yeah, it's easy to do. But we are talking about millions and millions of pages of text here, whether it's regulations, whether it's standards, and then you have your internal documentation around obligations, policies, procedures, controls, risk, and the list goes on and on, right? And conventional tools really, don't help with that analysis process. It's all manual, and most of the time, this data is also very distributed, right? It's distributed, it's disjointed, and it's ambiguous because you have different people who are like authoring these documents. So this is a problem that we have to solve, and this is a problem that's worth our attention because it is unworkable with conventional tools, and we just can't afford to keep throwing more human capital at this problem. Right? At some point, the cost of compliance and also the ability of humans to process this kind of information starts diminishing. Right? And this problem is unavoidable as well. We are in an information age, and we are going to continue to be burdened with information. And it is urgent. I mean, as Elizabeth said, the regulatory scrutiny has gone up, and management board, they are now being held accountable for compliance breaches, right? And this problem is very much underserved, right? Because the technology is not there, and the only solution companies have is to either outsource these tasks or just throw more professionals to work on these tasks. Back to you, Elizabeth.
Very interesting, Venki. Thank you. With the intense focus on compliance activities and the significant investment organizations are allotting to these efforts, why is staying compliant so hard?
Yeah, so it was again a great question, and I probably will be preaching the choir about this particular problem. See, compliance, obviously, there is arguments can be made. Compliance is about the culture at the organization, the tone at the top. A few rogue employees have broken some rules. Those are all very valid arguments, but lack of advanced technology to deal with this, a very complex and intertwined landscape, regulatory, business, and risk landscape, right, cannot be ignored. Right? So let me double click on this statement. Right? So what you see on the screen, right? Try to model a GRC organization. The blue squares represent the GRC organization. So a typical GRC organization model has business units, right? They have multiple locations that they're operating in. They offer, many products and services to their consumers, and they have different functions within the organization. And then you add on legal entities and other aspects. That's the GRC organization model, right? And this model is hierarchical and intertwined, right? So you are offering a business unit, offering a particular product at a particular location, might have the preview of certain regulators, whereas a business unit offering the same product at a different location might be under the preview of some additional citations or rules that we need to follow. Right? And this is changing. Businesses change, evolve. Right? I have worked on with a large global bank. They had 12,000 plus entities that they were tracking, and there were changes happening to the tune of 300 to 500 changes happening every week, where entities were getting collapsed, entities were getting merged, they were getting split. So it's a very, very dynamic environment. Now you take this environment and now you superimpose your GRC taxonomy on it. You have your policies, you have your obligations, controls, procedures, risks, and they're all intertwined, right? You have controls that are applicable to a certain location for a certain product, and you might have procedures that vary by location, vary by the service that you are selling, right? So now in this complex environment, think about a change that's happening, right? And again, change is not always one directional. We always think about, impact of regulatory change, but we don't really talk much about, hey, what is the impact of business environment change on your external obligations? It's equally important for us to manage that, right? Now, a simple change, whether it's happening in your regulatory environment, business environment, or a new emerging risk that you've identified, this has a widespread cascading impact on this GRC model and your GRC taxonomy, right? And it's not, just a cascading impact. It's a very inconsistent impact, right? That's why staying compliant is so hard to do, right? I mean, you see stories, 10 to 15% of an organization workforce, is categorized as risk compliance and regulatory professionals, right? I mean, that's a mind-boggling statistic, right? $10,000 on average is spent per employee is spent on GRC solutions. I mean, these are unsustainable costs, and we really have to figure out, how we can manage this cost, while at the same time, reduce the risks of non-compliance. Right? So I just want to bring one more point up here, right? If you look at this this problem statement, the way I described it, just imagine, right? If you have threaded all these different squares, right? Now a change happens on a particular regulation. You pull the thread on that particular regulatory change. Then you see, what are the impacted policies at which locations, which functions, right? Which procedures, controls, risks. That is the benefit of automating compliance traceability.
Wow, Venki, the task for companies seems complex.
It is.
Yes, I do see some hands raised in the chat box. So could you write your questions in the chat, and at the end we'll come back and answer them right after we finish this part of the session. So Venki, next question. How has technology evolved, and why are we confident that we can help solve the problem now?
Yep, excellent question. See, I want to introduce the concept of neural networks, or more popularly known as termed as deep learning nowadays, right? So neural networks and or deep learning is not a new concept. This concept has been in existence for almost 30, 40 plus years now, right? It's only lately, like over the last 4 or 5 years, we have seen significant advances made in this with this particular technology. Neural networks is nothing but a subset of artificial intelligence, right? And we have seen a lot of academic interest going into this technology, as well as a lot of open source projects that were created to make this technology available. Right? And thanks to the cheap computing power, we can actually build language models using neural networks and train these language models on a corpora that is very specific to the domain that you are trying to address. Right? So what neural networks does and is really help you do certain tasks at scale. Like for example, given two statements, a neural network will tell you, a properly trained and tuned neural network will tell you what is the similarity between these statements, right? Or it can go ahead, given a statement, it can classify whether this statement is an obligation or it is an information. It can also do categorizations, right? It can also say, hey, look, this particular citation is referring to open-ended credit or closed-ended credit. Right? It can categorize things, and it can also help with some predictions and trends. Right? This was a technology that was not available to us even 4 or 5 years ago. Right? Now, Foresee Risk has trained neural network models on the regulatory corpora. So now we understand the context and the intent of a statement and be able to do multiple operations at scale. Obviously, neural network is augmented by natural language processing, and most importantly, by some common sense software engineering. At the end of the day, this is not about technology. This is about a problem that we are trying to solve, right? And neural networks, NLP, software, these are just means for us to come together and solve this particular problem. Foresee Risk is the AI middle layer. We extract relevant and actionable intelligence from unstructured text, whether it's coming from your regulatory environment, your external risk environment, or in your business environment. And we connect the dots so that you as an organization can actually augment the human investments that you have made and the conventional tools that you have in place to keep pace with the change. Our really goal is to reduce the cost of compliance and at the same time reduce the risk of non-compliance.
So this infrastructure has enabled many customers to reimagine compliance traceability in 4-step approach. Can you describe the end-to-end approach?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So when we talk about Foresee Risk and what we do, Foresee Risk is a complementary solution, right? It is not here to replace your existing GRC infrastructure. It complements your current GRC infrastructure, and it provides some end-to-end activities that will help solve or automate all these manual tasks that we had talked about in the past. So I can really talk about it in 3 distinct steps. The first step is identification, right? So identification involves identifying new requirements, or changes to requirements, or new and emerging risks that you have, that your company is facing. So we offer solutions like Reg Research, Horizon Scan, which help you automate this particular step. The second thing is once you identified a new requirement, how do you connect this requirement to your internal control framework, right? That's really regulatory mapping or compliance traceability or compliance map, many terms in the industry floating around for this function. 4Cris provides a solution that actually can take a rule, a citation, and trace it all the way back through your internal control framework, with policies, obligations, controls, and all the way, to an issue, to see, hey, look, does this issue have regulatory exposure? You can actually connect it to a requirement and to a regulator and see, there is potential exposure here, right? And last but not the least, change is constant. That's unavoidable. And when a change happens, we capture the change through our impact assessment solution and be able to take the change and assess the impact on your internal control framework, as well as, on your organization, right? Which locations, which functions, which processes are impacted, right? So this is an end-to-end solution. And again, the few things we have to, I think, understand is AI is not the nirvana, right? AI is not going to take you 100% there. If we are very comfortable claiming that we can get you to 80-85% of accuracy, right? But it's never going to be 100%. There's always going to be the need for the compliance, the risk professionals, the subject matter experts to put their final disposition and take it to the 100%. But AI can learn from that, and it gets better and better and better over time, right? But it's still a significant value add. Instead of starting from zero, now you probably can get started from 70, 80, 85%. And be able to cover the last mile. So that's really, what we do. I mean, we are about increasing the efficiency, effectiveness, and agility of the organization and of your current investments in the GRC infrastructure.
Thanks, Mickey. We appreciate you walking through your thought process. Now, can you and Richie walk through the steps to demonstrate how compliance traceability can be made more automated by using the features offered by 4Cris?
Yeah, we would love to. And Ruchi is our represents our product management team. She's been involved in GRC for better part of her career, and I would love to see Ruchi demonstrate. So before Richie, you get started, I want to just give a quick background on what Richie is going to show. The first, we're going to talk a little bit, or we're going to dwell a little bit into how automate some of the manual activities like reg research, right? We're going to talk about, accessing, an inventory of regulations, standards, laws, all digitized, all interconnected, using simple Google-like search, right? Then how can you use this information to create your rule books that are more strategic in nature, right? And how do you identify if there is a proposed change that's happening? How easy it is to identify this proposed change within our reg research solution, Horizon Scan solution. And last but not the least, when a proposed changes happen, I will show you how easy it is to assess the impact of this proposed change on your internal control framework, whether it's your rule repository, whether it's your policies, controls, etc. So that's the first part of the demo that Ruchi is going to showcase. And then we move into the next step, which is compliance traceability and impact assessment features. Right, Ruchi?
Thank you, Enki. Regulatory research solution is used by all three lines of defense in an organization. It helps compliance professionals to build rule inventory in a more strategic way and gives organizations a competitive advantage. Our digital library consists of all banking regulations, federal regulations, guidances, state regulations, laws and acts, enforcement actions, and more. Thus, giving an ability to access multiple sources under one roof. It is as simple as Google search to access regulations across jurisdictions using simple search. Let us move to our first use case. Regulator CFPB Part 1070, Regulations FCA, State Regulations California. This is further refined with a key phrase search disclosure of records. With a defined search result, following are the key features of regulatory research solution. AI-powered topic cloud. AI identifies the compliance areas based on your search to further help you refine the search. Result summary. On the other hand, the result summary helps you analyze the distribution of rules across multiple sections of the selected path to refine your results further. Moving next. The search results, the AI engine parses the regulations into granular citations. These citations are further classified as information, obligations, policies, standards, disclosures, and more. Using regulatory research, you can directly access the authority source information in more detail. AI also provides related information to selected authority sources like US code and navigation to different areas within the same space. Once the compliance professionals analyze the rules applicable to them, can pin and save these rules and create rule inventory used for further collaborations for reviews, feedback, and download the rules to Excel. Thus, to summarize, you can access multiple sources of external regulations across jurisdictions by the simple search in regulatory research solution. Let's now talk about identifying regulatory changes. Today, exists a widening gap between the regulatory change and organization loaded with risk of not staying up to date with these regulatory changes. You can easily access all these regulatory changes at each rule level within authority source. A triangle signifies that there is latest regulatory change at granular level. At regulatory authority source, AI helps you to identify and compare the changes identified as deleted and newly added text. Real-time access and analysis of these regulatory changes helps you to improve efficiency and reduces the information overload on your teams. Your organization can become more agile by AI defining the impact of these changes on your regulatory and business taxonomy. The impact analysis report helps you access and analyze the impacted related objects with those regulatory changes. AI identifies impact of your internal control framework across your business units, legal entities, and locations. Thus, lower the burden of discovery and analysis on your compliance teams with this well-stitched and integrated solution. With that, let us move to our second use case. Today, it is very difficult and time-consuming task to identify the regulatory exposure for operational issues, incidents, or complaints received. With our reg research solution, you can just type in the incidents and find the relevant results. For example, prepaid account disclosures were not available in Spanish language. With this search, in no time, you can find an answer to this issue that disclosures required under this part may be made in a language other than English. Thus, we know that it is good to have disclosures specified in an English language. Thus, in no time, your team can access that the given incident and its regulatory exposure, thus improving operational efficiency and helping the compliance teams taking effective decisions. With that, the other issue that we noticed today is proliferation of enterprise data. First LOD, most of the times ends up creating duplicate controls, issues, risk, policy statements, and more due to lack of access to all enterprise taxonomy. Within the regulatory research solution, in addition to the external regulations, the first LOD can also search for enterprise data, like controls, policies, control objectives, issues, risk, and more. It helps first LOD to do a detailed search before creating any duplicates and avoid proliferation. It works consistently as regulatory research for external regulations. Thus, with AI-powered integrated reg research, scan horizon, and impact analysis solution helps compliance professionals managing rule inventory, find answers in real time, and view end-to-end impact of regulatory change on your regulatory and business taxonomy. Over to you, Venki.
All right, thanks, Ruchi. So as Ruchi sets up for the to demonstrate compliance maps and impact assessment, I want to briefly talk about what she just showed, right? So if you look at the solution that the functions or features that Ruchi demonstrated, right now, if you go into any organization, this is all done manually. It takes an army of people to actually go scan through multiple websites and read hundreds and thousands of lines of text to get to an answer. Or you have outsourced this, or you have a content provider who is providing you these details. All take time, take money. You're not efficient as an organization, and it's the investments that you're making is not really the most effective, right? Reg research, horizon scan, and the impact assessment in an integrated fashion can actually help you to get to the root of the problem, right? Find answers in minutes rather than hours or days. That's really the beauty what the AI can do. Could we have done this 5 years ago? Probably not. But now the technology is there, and we are actually use this and actually make this production ready right now. Back to you, Ruchi, on compliance map. So what Ruchi is going to demonstrate next is our compliance map solution. All right. So again, something that either we have done it manually, if at all we did it in the past. Some things that always became stale and never kept updated, and the reliability on compliance maps, is really not that strong out there in the domain, right? So what 4C Risk has done is created a solution using neural networks, natural language processing, and good software engineering practices, where an organization can go and start tracing a rule to policies, or maybe a policy to a control, or maybe a policy to another policy, right? And all the way, you can create end-to-end maps all the way to an issue, and in the future metrics. So you can actually start looking at an end-to-end traceability. The compliance map functionality solution is all about ensuring the design effectiveness and the operational effectiveness of your internal control framework. It helps you identify gaps. It helps you identify redundancies. It helps you identify duplicates. Really helps you save your costs as well as reduce your risks. Right? With that, Ruchi.
Thank you, Anki. Okay, so moving to the compliance maps. Compliance teams, with the help of compliance map, can perform traceability and create regulatory maps between rules and internal control frameworks like policies, controls, procedures, risks, issues, and more. The compliance map in the solution is represented by a Sankhya diagram. A Sankhya diagram is a graphical representation of the flow from one connection to another. Let us have a look to our first use case. It's two-source compliance map. The two-source compliance map refers to the two sources defined for traceability. We have taken rules as our primary source under column 1 and policy statements as our secondary source under column 2. All these nodes are unique citations represented here. The traceability is established between rule statements at the start and policy statements at the end. The relationship here is defined with the color-coded codes. These color-coded codes basically defines the strength of coverage and connection. The green signifies strong match, the yellow signifies partial match, and the red signifies the minimal match. You can analyze each node here and its traceability by selecting a node, helping compliance teams to view traceability from one end to another in real time. Moving next, let's have a look to the impacted rules. Integration of identifying changes and its impact of compliance map has been done with our impact analysis solution. AI identifies and defines the rules impacted at Sankey diagram. Here, it is simply represented by a triangle defining the existence of a regulatory change. Once the user analyzes these changes, can take immediate actions on mapped policy statements with these impacted rules. That is not all. It is important to understand that there would be citations that had a larger gap and had no match with the regulatory rules. This is the area that AI identifies as compliance gaps and notifies you to take relevant actions. All these compliance gaps can be identified by the mapping matrix under unmapped column. In here, we see that requirement 1006, 1010, policy statement, customer liability P3, and more are the compliance gaps identified by AI. It is important for you to take immediate action and create a mapping to these compliance gaps by easily clicking on the edit icon. These edit icons will be available in front of defined statements and define the mapping. Our AI tool with these user actions learns more and bring in further accuracy, thus improving efficiency and bringing in effectiveness on daily basis. Thus, compliance maps is a solution that helps you to identify documentation weaknesses, design or operational weaknesses by comparing policies, controls, issues, risk, and more. Moving next to a complete view to end-to-end traceability. An advanced compliance map can be defined with multiple sources as well. In this compliance map, there are 3 sources selected. Rules as a primary source at column 1, followed by the policy statements and control statements as our secondary sources. With this multiple sources defined, user can identify and analyze traceability from end to end. View a flow and a connection of a requirement to the policy citation and further to the control citation. In real time, access and identify the strength of your internal control framework. Here, I let you reimagine the compliance traceability with advanced techniques of artificial intelligence with us. Thank you. Venki, would you like to add your thoughts to this, please?
Yeah, no, that's excellent, Ruchi. So, in addition to what Ruchi mentioned, right, this solution can be easily integrated through open APIs with your current GRC infrastructure. And users can actually get alerted, when a reg change happens, whether it's a proposed rule or there is a final rule that's becoming effective, they will get notifications, not just that this particular reg is, there's a proposed rule, but also, what would be the impact of this proposed rule on the objects that are owned by that user, right? With the user is a owner of a policy or controls, they would get an impact assessment report along with the reg change notification. Right? That's really the power. And they will have a dashboard that they can review and analyze and be able to take actions and, and collaborate with their peers using our collaboration utilities. So it's truly an end-to-end groundbreaking solution, the first of its kind, where we enable the compliance and the risk teams to just become so much more efficient, effective, and make the organization so much more agile in how they perform their compliance tasks. All right, with that, thanks, Ruchi. And maybe I will just do a quick summary of what Ruchi has presented, and then we'll start our Q&A session. All right, can we go to the next slide? Thank you very much. All right, so what we talked about is the four key solutions: reg research, compliance map, impact assessment, and horizon scan. So if you notice, we barely demonstrated horizon scan because we felt horizon scan has to be integrated, right? We don't need a separate email notification. When we send a horizon scan notification, we want to send you what is the impact along with the proposed change. Right. So we reduce the burden of discovery and analysis on your teams. Reg research, key features, right? A repository of applicable regulations, standards, and laws, all interconnected, digitized, and with actionable intelligence that can be accessed by all three lines of defense. We have a very sophisticated search engine. That's a semantic search engine. So, you can search for information using the language and the context that you are most comfortable with, and AI will find you the right results. Right? You can build a rule repository, a rule inventory that is more strategic in nature, gives you a competitive advantage. And more importantly, an inventory that can be updated in real time as information changes in your environment. We also provide obligations, risks, and controls as part of our solution. Right? For the citations that you have identified in your rule inventory, we generate obligations, we generate risks, and we have actually control generation coming up in our roadmap very soon. That is reg research application. Then we move to compliance map. It's really for you to achieve end-to-end traceability of regulatory and enterprise taxonomy. Right? We can ensure the design and the operational effectiveness of your internal control framework with the compliance map solution. Right? You can identify redundancies and duplicates in your internal control framework, thereby reducing the cost of compliance. Right? And more importantly, the use cases, rogue policies. Hey, you can map a corporate policy with policy at a particular business unit to make sure that there is nothing that's not in compliance with your corporate policies. You can also reduce the footprint of your policies. We have a use case where a certain enterprise is actually trying to bring down 240 policies for a particular compliance area spread across the globe to a more reasonable, manageable 40 to 50 policies. So this is a solution that actually will help you get to the answers fast, right? And as Ruchi demonstrated, identifying what is the impact of an incident, and you have regulatory exposure. It takes teams hours and maybe not days to actually find the answer. Now with the real-time integration, as soon as an incident or an issue is logged, you can actually immediately see what is the impact. Do you have regulatory exposure because of this incident? You can also start identifying, are there similar issues getting logged? Right? You can identify patterns, trends using the compliance map solution. Impact assessment, right? You saw that assessment of changes that are happening on your internal control framework, and it is bidirectional, right? When a policy changes, you can see what is the impact on your obligations or on your regulations, right? Because of the policy change. We support complex GRC organization models. That means, it's just not telling you this policy changed or this policy got impacted or this control got impacted. We can actually tell you which location, which function, really integrated with your model and be able to tell you exact location, pinpoint the location. And you can collaborate with your peers and integrate with your GRC systems with our solution. And Horizon Scan, it's all about avoiding information overload. Even with a lot of solutions out there, we are burdened with information. We have to go analyze the information, and we have tried to take that burden away, right? So we obviously monitor the authority sources for changes. We quickly narrow down the scope and show you how the rule has changed from its current effective rule, right? And we notify the subscribers. The subscribers, users can subscribe to notifications that are based on the regulator, and more importantly, based on a compliance topic that they are interested in. And guess what? It's not just one email for every change that's happening. You can actually subscribe to a daily digest or a weekly digest. So you're not inundated with information and you get exactly what you want and when you want it. Right? So that's really our Horizon Scan solution. So that kind of completes the demonstration and some of the questions that we had. Back to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Venki, and thanks, Richie, for demonstrating the tool. At this point, we're going to move to the Q&A session. Please post your questions in the chat window. We have several questions already. Due to the limited time remaining, we will respond back to some of the questions through email if we don't have time today. Now, let's start with the first question. Venki, can you tell us what it takes for customers to deploy 4C risk?
Yeah, great question. As I mentioned earlier, we are a complementary solution. We are available on the cloud as a SaaS solution, but also we can be deployed as a single instance on a private cloud or in-house. 4C risk does not need long drawn-out deployments. You can actually have access to the system, a functional system, in less than 24 hours. And, it's completely managed on the Amazon cloud and can be deployed on your internal clouds if required. ROI can be achieved in weeks. Rather than months, and the cost of deployment, as I said, is just non-existent. We can be up and running in less than 24 hours.
Great, thank you. The next question, Venki, does the platform automatically align to the related risk framework and associated controls to the changing regulatory requirements?
Yes, we do. Our AI algorithms have the capability to track a change and automatically assess the impact on your risk framework and the associated controls. Right? And provide you with interesting graphics on how to visualize the impact, as well as simple email notifications and text reports on what is the impact of a regulatory change. So the end-to-end process is automated.
Thank you, Venki. Next question. Are the impact and risk assessments standard or built from the business rules?
The impact and the risk assessments are actually built from the business rules. So there is an ability to configure some aspects of how to do an alignment. But a lot of it actually is the AI model learning from the data, learning from the feedback it's getting from the users over time. And it has its own inbuilt algorithms on how to do the mapping. I hope I answered that question.
Thank you. Yes. Do you have scenario capability that proposes change but does not change the current data and status?
Sorry, can you repeat that, Elizabeth?
Yeah. Do we have a scenario capability that has proposes change but it doesn't change the current data
Yeah,
status. Yeah.
absolutely. So we actually have version management for our compliance map. So it's a very interesting question. So you can actually simulate a change or take a proposed change and see the impact, but really create a new version of your traceability or your compliance map so it doesn't impact the current effective map. So you can actually make this effective at a future date.
Thank you. Yes. Are you FedRAMP compliant?
We are completely on Amazon Cloud. We are yet to certify ourselves against FedRAMP, but we do follow certain standards based on our service providers. So we're comfortable in saying we can certify if the need comes to.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Connecting rules to our policies and controls has been a time-consuming task. How much time savings are you seeing with your current customers?
Yeah, again, great question. If the data is very badly correlated, then you're probably gonna, at a minimum, get a 60 to 70% savings on your time. If the data is correlated, reasonably correlated, then you can definitely achieve close to 85 to 90% savings on your time.
Thank you, Venki. Next question. What is the source of regulatory data? That's the first portion of it. Do you want to answer that first and then we'll continue?
Yeah. So a lot of the regulations and standards and laws that we have in our repository are actually public domain. This is information that is available in the public domain, and what we have done at 4C Risk is taken this information, build the bridges with this public domain sites, and digitized them, and extracted intelligence and connected the dots. We have connected the dots, for example, on the information security side between NIST 853 and HITRUST. Not just a regular mapping, but something that's more dynamic and that's more actually granular, right? Both are public domain standards, and we have taken it and we have made it so much more usable for enterprises, organizations, and professionals.
Thank you, Venki. The second part of the question is, have you come across any legal concerns with the correctness and accuracy of the regulatory information available from the tool?
No, we have not. And we are also very conscious about that aspect. So we have been very particular to make sure that we don't change the content. We present the content and we actually, the way it is, maybe in a more structured fashion. And we make it easy for users to search the content and be able to extract certain intelligence from the content. But the content is really not getting changed. It is just getting displayed slightly, in a more structured fashion in some cases.
Thanks. Can the platform enable us to bridge our policy gaps and help us build our risk and compliance taxonomy and control libraries?
Absolutely. So the platform is really meant to bridge your policy gaps, identify where are the design weaknesses, and even suggest obligations or policy language that we could use to bridge that gap, right? And as I said earlier on, we are releasing, we have a risk statement generation capability already, and we are going to be releasing the control generation using AI in near future, in a couple of months.
Thanks, Venki. Next question. How easy is it for customers to incorporate new regulations, and what type of regulations are customers requiring?
Yeah, so we've been very focused on making sure that our data ingestion process is flexible and is actually a partner and IT enabler. It takes us less than 3 days, or about 3 days for a very complex regulation to be ingested, and could be a few hours for simple regulations and guidance letters and all that to be ingested. And as I said, the beauty of it is, it's not just Postgres. We can have partners and even IT professionals help with ingesting regulations. We also understand that not everything, your obligations are not just coming from your regulatory authorities. There could be other internal artifacts that are very specialized to your organization. So that's the reason why we had to build this capability, so you could be self-enabled to bring in certain obligations that may not be public domain.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. We're getting close to the end of our time. So just one final question, and then we'll summarize the session. What programs does 4C Risk have that help customers accelerate the process?
Drop us a note. We have a free trial period that we can set you up with. But as I said, more importantly, you can be up and running on the system in less than 24 hours. It's fully enabled. You will get an ROI on this in less than a few weeks.
Thank you. So to summarize what we've discussed today, the complexities of the current regulatory, business, and external risk environments, and how keeping pace with compliance change is hard. Now, how automating compliance traceability can reduce cost, improve productivity, and increase confidence in your company's compliance initiatives. And lastly, by walking us through the highlights of how the tools such as 4C Risk can provide linkage and end-to-end visibility into a company's internal and external directives. All the topics today align with the value proposition compliance traceability brings to your company's compliance program. First, efficiency, resulting in time saved, money saved. Secondly, effectiveness, resulting in accuracy, completeness, and thoroughness. And thirdly, agility, resulting in being able to quickly identify relationships from different perspectives and react to the changes in your regulatory, business, and external risk environments quickly. We hope this session was beneficial, and a tremendous thanks to everyone for joining us today. We'll be sending you a link to the session, and also summarizing the transcript in the upcoming days, so you'll get the recording. Now, I just want to put a plug in for our next webinar, which is on November 16th, where Venki will moderate the conversation with our esteemed guests, Michael Rasmussen from GRC 2020, and a representative from Accenture regarding GRC 5.0, cognitive GRC, leveraging AI to make GRC effective, efficient, and agile. Have a wonderful day or evening. We look forward to hearing from you in the near future to talk about reimagining your compliance traceability. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.